Hey, everybody, it's time for the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. It is high noon on Friday. We are so glad that you have taken a little bit of time to join us today. We're going to have a fun podcast today. I'm going to be doing some tongue in cheek things today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll be talking about, we're about a week away from the Bassmaster Elite Series at Toledo Bend, and very excited about that. Over at Siloam Baptist Church, we're going to have what we call Meet the Elites. And Meet the Elites, we've got a guy named Brandon Card, Clifford Perch, Cody Huff, Joey Swintez, and some guy named Scott Martin is going to be there. Scott Martin just won the Bassmaster Open. Congratulations to Scott, but they're going to be sharing their faith at Siloam Baptist Church coming up just before the tournament practice day, and that will be next week. Next Sunday, as a matter of fact. And so, if you're in the Louisiana area, you're in the Manny, Louisiana area, we would love for you to come by. Bring your church people by, bring your friends by, bring your bass and buddies by, and they'll learn a lot about fishing and a lot about faith. Very excited today on the podcast. I'm going to be doing something that I want to. I just want to share with everybody today. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before I do, I want to tell you, if you're thinking about buying a bass boat this year, you need to look no further than Concord Mills, North Carolina. Go up and see my buddy Eric Winters. He's the manager at the Bass Pro Shop there. They're a one-stop shop. Not only can they provide you with a high quality, the best bass boats around, they can provide you with quality service, and it's a one-stop shop. You can ride in there, get your bass boat, get every rod, reel, lure, line, anything you can imagine, you can go to one spot, Concord Mills, North Carolina. See my buddy Eric Winter and tell him the Bass Chaplain sent you. Well, on today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about something that's just tongue in cheek. Now, I want you to understand that because there are people that wear their hearts on the sleeve every time they listen to a podcast or every time they hear somebody talk, and they will just keyboard warriors. They'll get on there and they'll just take shots at you, and that's fine. I understand that, but I want to say it up front. This is a tongue-in-cheek thing, something that I've learned from being over the years. I'm going to give you my top 5 things not to say or do to a Bass Pro. Okay, that's what I'm going to be talking now. Why am I giving this to you? Because I started with the Bassmaster Elite Series, being the chaplain for the anglers there in 2009. So I've been doing that, what, about 15 years now. And I have ridden in the boat, not with every single pro on the tour, but I've ridden with probably 75% of those guys. I've ridden in the boat with them, hung out with them, hung out in the culture. And it's like being a missionary there. You had to earn your way in. You had to get in and let those guys know that, hey, I'm not here to get stuff. I'm not here to, whatever. I'm here for you. I'm really here, and I'm a part of. I consider myself part of the bass fishing, the Bassmasters family, and I love those guys. Love them. Love the whole fishing industry. Love Major League Fishing too. Love all the bass pros and their families that I have the privilege of ministering to. But I've seen some things over the years. Now, before I was the bass chaplain, I was a rabid fan. I'm still a rabid fan, but I was really a rabid fan. I mean, I collect Big League Bass Pro cards. As a matter of fact, I've got cards right here. I just reached in and grabbed one randomly. I got Guy Akers card right here. Look at that. I collect Big League Bass Pro cards. I collect those, right? I've got about every Bassmaster episode from 1985 to the present. I've got most of them on VHS tape. I mean, I've got them. I can go back and I can watch Ray Scott and Bob Cobb and all those guys that I just idolized growing up. I love those. I remember guys would talk about Terry Bradshaw and Roger Staubach, and I'd say, man, never mind Terry. But did you see what Bill Dance caught, man? Did you see what Roland Martin did over here? He is awesome. I mean, I was eat up with the sport of bass fishing, and I love it. And I follow bass fishing like a lot of people follow football or basketball or baseball, and I love it. I know that in 1993, I can tell you, who won the Bugs Island tournament. That would be Gary Klein. And so I love bass fishing trivia. I love being around bass pros, and God has blessed me to be around those guys. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is not a shot at any of the fans. As a matter of fact, I'm going to self-deprecate And I have done most of the things that I'm going to tell my listener today not to do. I've done most of these things. I've done at least 4 out of 5. And so I'm going to tell you about those things today. And so we're just going to do a little tongue-in-cheek podcast, and we're going to talk about things that I see. So top 5 things, and they're in no particular order, that I'm going to tell you about what not to say. Now, listen, the sport of bass fishing, professional fishing, is probably now I'm not even going to say probably, it is the most fan accessible sport that there is. I mean, you can't go up to anybody on the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Francisco 49ers and just walk up to them directly, go up to the stadium, walk in there, and just start talking to them. You can't do that. You can do that in the sport of bass fishing. You can come to every single Bassmaster Elite Series, and there'll be times when you can walk out on the dock and talk to those guys, or when they come up to the weigh-ins, you can stop and you can get all kinds of information from them, and you can get autographs, and those guys are personable. And let me tell you, I have never ridden in the boat with a belligerent bass pro. I just haven't. Do people have bad days? Absolutely. Everybody has bad days. I've had bad days on the water. My friend J.R. Hennard can attest to that. I've had awful days on the water, and everybody does. Okay. So today is just a tongue-in-cheek deal of things that I've seen over the years that I found funny, and I know some bass pros find it funny, and it's not anything major or anything that they're just gonna, because there'll be some guy out there that'll say, "Well, I'm tell you right now, they think you're hot stuff, and they think they're big, and I'll go up to anybody I want to anytime. I'll fish anywhere I want to." It's tongue in cheek, and so I just want to get that out of the way right now. So, top 5 things that fans probably shouldn't say, or just some things we shouldn't do. Okay. Number 1, don't give bass pros information. And everybody wants to do that. And I've wanted to do that. I remember the first time that the Bassmaster Elite Series came to Santee when I was old enough. First time they came, I was about 11 years old. The second time they came, I was in my 20s, and man, I was a hot shot. I thought I knew everything about bass fishing. And every pro that I came up to, I wanted to tell them what to do. And you see this all the time. And I would probably say that is one of the biggest headaches that bass pros have, is that people want to help them. They want to give them information about their lake, especially if they're there at the lake and they want to tell them. If you want to listen to a great podcast, Chris Zaldain's podcast on the polygraph guy, and that was a great podcast. Look that up. I believe it's the Bilge podcast. And what a great informative podcast about giving polygraphs and how intense it is for these bass pros to take polygraphs, and how important it is for them not to get information ahead of time. But it's a natural thing. You meet a bass pro, say at Cracker Barrel or somewhere, and you go, "Hey man, you ought to fish over in the pastures right there. That's where you ought to be. You ought to be over here on the lower lake. You ought to be," I'm from Santee, so you got to fish a spinnerbait on the lower lake. You got to tell them there's a cutoff point, and they cannot get information. As a matter of fact, most fishing tours today, most pro tours, have a time when they announce their schedule that the pros cannot get information from people, and people want to do it. I've seen, and I'll tell you how bad it gets. I've been in a boat one time where somebody on a dock says, "There's a bass right here. It's a big one right here." And what that person unknowingly has done is canceled that pro from being able to fish in that spot for that fish right there. And every pro I've ever been with, they always say immediately, "I can't get any information. I'm sorry, I can't get it. You can't tell me any information." And a lot of times, because a lot of these guys have very, very sensitive consciences, they will have to call the tournament director right then and self-report and say, "Listen, I just had a fan tell me I needed to fish a purple spinnerbait on, this body of water. And I just wanted you to know that happened." And those guys are on the up and up. Most of those guys are, and they'll self-report, or they'll tell the fan immediately, "I can't get any information." And I know you want to help, and I know I wanted to help. I wanted to tell them, "You need to be throwing a yellow floating worm. You need to do that right now." And we want to share information with them, but they just can't get any information. So number 1, Don't give Bass Pros information about your lake. Don't do that. They're not allowed to get information. Okay. Number two. All right. I see this a lot at like the Bassmasters Classic or any kind of boat show or ICAST or anywhere. You don't have to give the professional fisherman your resume. All right. I see this all the time, and I've actually been guilty of it myself, where I see a pro that I love and I just want him to know how good I am. And hey, I won a tournament over on Lake Kiwi. Yeah, I've been slamming them over there. I'm pretty good over there. I've won 6 tournaments, and there are people, and I watch this a lot. I watch fans because I'm just sensitive to it now. With traveling with pros and riding with pros and driving for pros, and just see them. Imagine, imagine you're in the position where you're working a show. You're a pro and you're working a show, and you have 500 people that they come up to you and they tell you every time how good they are. Okay. It's not that they're going to point their finger at you. They're going to probably sit there and smile and say, yeah, man, that's great, man. Good job, man. Way to go. That's pretty awesome. Stuff like that. But I know that a lot of them get back and they go, man, I heard 1,500 resumes today. I heard, stuff like that. You don't have to tell them everything you know. One of the things I try to do is just ask about them. Maybe you want to ask about a certain technique that you like to fish, or hey, I saw you skip docks real good, or you're great with a drop shot, or you're good, and you want to ask questions. They love, fielding questions like that, but you don't have to give your resume all the time. And I see that a lot, and I know that it wears on those guys a lot of times. But it's a part of it, and they understand that. They understand that. But it's just a general rule, just tongue-in-cheek rule. You don't have to give your resume. You don't have to tell them about how good you are. They know that you're there and you're a fishing fan, and they love the fans. And Bassmaster loves fans. Bassmaster is very, very fan friendly. And but you don't have to give your resume every time you get up there. All right. Number three, don't ask them if they can call and get your boat fixed tomorrow. I hear that one. I know that sounds crazy, but that a lot of times fans, and I've been guilty of this too, where we're always looking for an in. Hey, can you call up there and tell them to get my boat, ready to go? Or, can you help me out and get a better deal on this? Can you help me, do all this stuff? A lot of those guys, well, not a lot of them, all of them, they have to negotiate every deal that they get. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. All right. But it's not that they have special ends or special deals. And they're oftentimes pros will help you out. They will. But don't kind of use them to walk up there and just say, hey, can you get me, my boat in or up to the front of the line, or can you get me this, big deal? It comes with understanding the sport. And again, this is tongue in cheek. This is just stuff where, it's not that they're calling me and saying, you better tell them this, or you better nothing of the sort of that. I'm just talking about my observations, stuff like that. But I see a lot of guys, and I've been that guy where I walked up there and I say, hey, can you help me out? Can you do this and stuff like that? They hear that a lot. And so what I try to do is I try to make it about the pro. Try to be, hey, how are you doing? How's it going, man? Things like that. And they're really more likely to help you, doing that. And so most of those guys are just great guys anyway. Number 4, are you ready? This is a big one. This is one that I have seen, and I have made this mistake so many times when I started. Don't engage them in lengthy conversation when they're doing their tackle. All right. And it's the most, you think that would be the time when they would be most likely to talk. A lot of times, if you go around to different tournaments, you will see a pro and he will pull into a parking lot and he'll be sitting in his boat, or he'll be in his campground, or he'll be at the place he's staying, or even pull up on the bank, and they're sitting there and they're doing their tackle. They're restringing their line. They're tying on baits. They've got their tackle laid out, and you'd think, okay, this is the best time for me to go up there and start engaging him in lengthy conversation. And listen, again, it's not that the pros going to tell you, don't be talking to me right now, stuff like that. They aren't going to tell you that ever. They're going to be nice, and they're really going to be professional because they are professionals. But one of the worst times you can talk to a pro, one of the worst times you can talk to them, is when they're doing their tackle. Why is that? Because that's when they're getting their game plan together. That's when they are sitting down thinking, okay, what rods go with what baits, what line size do I need to use? And I've got a limited amount of time and I've got to get this done. And many people will go up and they will just lean up against the boat and just start asking questions and just start asking stuff and just engage them because they think, they aren't doing anything. They're just kind of sitting around. But you think about that if you put it in the context of other sports. Think about the Super Bowl's coming up, so let's just use the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are up there and they're getting their mind right and they're getting ready to go. Imagine if you walked into there and just started saying, "Hey, man, you're a great man. Man, let me ask you something. When you throw that pass, Mahomes, do you try to angle it? What do I do when I'm doing a rollout and or handing off? Or I mean, you would not do that. You would not go up to a golfer when he's sitting there and he's getting ready to tee off and he's getting ready, to engage him in a lengthy conversation during that time. Doing tackle is a big deal for a pro. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Whenever I call up a pro, and I'll call, a lot of guys and just ask how they're doing and stuff, or I might have a question and I call up and they'll tell me, "Hey, man, I'm doing my tackle right now." And that tells me right then, okay, this is not a good time for me to talk. Okay. Now, again, I will say it again and again. They're going to be nice to you. They're going to be as polite as they can be. But you need to know in their mind, they're kind of going, "Man, good night. This is wild." All right. Let's get down to number 5 here. And this is a giant right here. Now, I'm going to say this and I'm going to make some people mad when I say this, but I am doing this in a fun way. And it's just my opinion. And you have every right in the world to disagree with me. Every right in the world. Okay. Everybody's got their opinions. And so, but this is just my personal opinion. And this is the one that I haven't done. I've done all of the top 4. I've wanted to give pros information before and I've blurted it out. Okay. I've gone up to pros and given them my resume. Hey, man, I'm a great fisherman. I'm really good. I'm good on this lake or that lake or, whatever. And I've asked them if they can help me with stuff. Hey, can you help me fix this? Can you get me an in? Can you ask that guy? Stuff like that. I have walked up to them while they're doing their tackle, and I've engaged them in a lengthy conversation. So I've made all of those faux pas, and I've made all of them. And I haven't done number 5, all right, but I've seen it done a million times, all right. And like I said, I'm gonna make some people mad when I say this, all right. Don't get on the water during a major fishing tournament and just start competing with those guys. Don't do that. Those guys are fishing for a living. Now, I'll give you South Carolina, for instance. We have lots of lakes. We got lots of lakes. And let me tell you, let me say it like this. All right. There's going to be some guy that says, "Well, I got every right. I got a day off and I can go on the water anytime I want to. That's public water and I got the right to fish that just as much as he did." And you are 100% correct. Okay. But I'm not talking about whether you should ask whether you can do that. I'm getting you to ask yourself whether you should do that. Because there's this big misnomer in bass fishing that these guys have an easy life. Man, they give them all these baits and they get all their stuff for free and they're just throwing free stuff at them. And they just, man, they live in the life of Riley out there drinking beer, eating Vienna sausages. They got a leisure sport. And man, it must be nice to be able to fish for a living and stuff. And you hear that a lot and you hear guys go up there. But let me tell you something. Professional bass fishing is a hard way to make a living. It really is. It is tough when you think about only half the field gets paid. You think about the amount of money that they pay to get into the tournament and the amount of money they spend in order to practice and to order to participate in this sport. It's not like golf. It's not like professional football. Nobody's dry cleaning their uniforms for them and handing them to them and they're walking out and they just, "Hey, go get in that big boat right there and that's your boat. And, here's all the free line you can use and just use, just go. It's not like that at all. Everything that these guys do, they have to negotiate with companies just like you would in a business. You have to negotiate. And sure, you might look in their man caves and stuff, and you see all this tackle and all this thing. But if you look in my office as an evangelist, you're going to see tons and tons of theology books. You're going to see theology books out the wazoo. You're going to see all this stuff and all this deal. And I paid for the vast majority of those books, and those are tools that I use in order to get prepared to accurately uh, exposit the Word of God. All right, it's the same thing with Bass Pros. You might look in back and go, look at all that line he's got. Wow, why does he need that much line? Look at all those baits he's got. Those are the tools that they use in order to be successful. And every lake is different, and every lake requires different lures, different techniques, different line sizes, different rods and reel combos and things like that. And there's this big thinking that they just throw this stuff at those guys. All of those deals with Bass Pros are negotiated, and they're negotiated usually on a yearly basis, maybe a couple of years, stuff like that. And they sign contracts with different companies, and then they have requirements that they need to fulfill for those companies. They have to do a certain amount of shows, they have to do a certain amount of appearances. They might have to wear a certain hat, they might have to wear certain sunglasses, they might have to wear certain attire, they might have to, and there are people that check to see if they are living up to their commitments, and they're using the baits that they're supposed to use, and they're using the line they're supposed to use. And all those are negotiated during the off season in order for those pros to be successful. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, a company will drop them, and it's just it's not as easy as it sounds, to the normal fan. Because when I was coming up, I was thinking, man, it must be nice, man. They get everything for free, and they give them all this stuff. And I hear people make comments like that all the time. Well, they gets it for free, and stuff like that. Let me tell you, they may get a lot of stuff, and they may get some stuff for free, but it's not cheap. It comes with a price. It comes with a price. And when they're out on the water and they're competing for the livelihood of their families, they're competing for their careers. And I see a lot of times where I'm a marshal or I'm in the back of the boat, and you see a local guy come up there and just start throwing right in the middle of what this guy is trying to do. And let me tell you, that's a frustrating thing for a professional fisherman when he's got a tournament on the line. And I know there are guys thinking, well, I've got every right. And I agree with you. You do have the right. You can, but you need to think whether you should or not. There are a lot of other lakes to fish. There are a lot of other times to fish. And so there are certain instances where locals have really determined the outcome of tournaments and affected it negatively for different anglers, because they feel the need to get out there and compete against those guys and show them how good they are, catch a fish around them and hold them up and look at stuff like that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. And get out there. There are times, before and after the tournaments, you can get out there and you can fish anytime you want to. You can go to another lake. You can enjoy watching Bassmaster live or whatever during that day, and you can learn a lot about your lake and use those tournament days to do that. And it's okay if you ride around and watch them. When you watch somebody fish, you want to make sure that you stay back. If you get kind of close, you might want to even ask him, say, hey, am I too close? Am I back? There's kind of an etiquette, an unspoken etiquette that you kind of stay back and you try to, let him do his work. And when his work is finished, go at it, man. Go at it. But those are just some 5 things that I like to share with people is, don't give information. You don't have to give everybody your resume. You don't need to ask for deals all the time or ask if they can help you all the time. If they want to help you, a lot of them will help you. Don't engage them in lengthy conversation while they're doing their tackle. And don't get out there during tournament day and try to compete with them. Let those guys have the water that day. That's one day, and let them have that. So, with all that being said, again, it was a tongue-in-cheek thing where I just wanted to come up and share a little bit of that stuff I've seen, over 15 years of being around the Bassmaster Tour and Major League Fishing, that frustrates a lot of guys. And let me tell you again, those guys, we have the most approachable pro sport there is. You can talk to these guys. They're great guys on the tour, and wonderful, wonderful men that compete. And there are a lot of great role models out there, a lot of young guys that are just great. If you're looking for someone for your kid to kind of emulate and look, we've got a lot of great role models in the sport of bass fishing, a lot of integrity, a lot of good character. And so, but let's be respectful to those guys and be a part of that. Now, with that being said, let me make a spiritual application here. We can go to God anytime. We can come to Christ anytime we hear his voice. When God speaks to us, he is ready. As a matter of fact, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." God is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is awake and he is alive, and he wants to have a relationship with you and with me. That's his desire. That is his goal. That is why we were put here on the planet, to have a relationship with God. And you can know Christ. Let me tell you, if you're ever sitting around, you listen to our podcast, and you are feeling like, I wonder if God is speaking to me through this. He is. God is always speaking to hearts. He's always speaking to people. Why? Because it is his desire to have a relationship with you. He wants you to know his son, Jesus, not just know about him, but know his son, Jesus. That is why God put me on the planet, is to help introduce people to the person of Jesus Christ. I met him when I was in college. I was at a fraternity party, laid under a pecan tree. If you're Edwin Evers, it's a pecan tree. But I laid under a pecan tree, and I said, "Jesus, if you'll forgive my sins, I will follow you." And Jesus stepped out of heaven and stepped into my life. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect, but in his eyes, he credits his righteousness to me, not because I deserved it, not because I'm a good person, but because of his grace and mercy. And his grace and mercy is accessible to you today. If you ever have a question about your faith, question about Christian things, you can come up to me anytime. Whether I'm doing my tackle or not, you can do stuff. That's tongue in cheek too. You can come up, you can come to me anytime. My number is 864-414-9453. And I'd be delighted for you to call me if you need somebody to pray for you, or if you want to ask questions about the Christian faith, or if you want to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Call me anytime. I'd love to speak with you. Hey, I want to thank you for watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, wherever it is you do. Hey, whatever platform you're listening on, if you're on YouTube, you can hit the little subscribe button. That will help us out. Maybe, make a comment and say, "Hey, Chris, I disagree with you on this point." It's okay to disagree with me. It's fine. All right. Or hey, I like this podcast. A lot of you have commented, and that helps us with the algorithm. You might want to hit the little bell notification button, and that tells you when our podcasts drop. And you can remember to watch the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. And again, if you're looking for a bass boat, Eric Winters, Concord Mills, North Carolina. You can't find a better place to buy a boat today, tomorrow, or this year there. This has been the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I will catch you guys next time. See ya.